phones, which of course is the number one way you can actually contact these kids. But luckily for me, I'd done my level 1 Google for Education training, and I had access to a lot more knowledge with a lot more tools. And I was using Google Forms to make little quizzes, and Google Forms has some really great options on there to make those quizzes. So they can't cheat as long as they're on a Chromebook that's owned by the college or administered by the college. They can't open other tabs. So that was quite fun to use as well. Used, I think it's called Kahoot as well. Did a couple of quizzes on that. Although I felt a lot of Kahoot's functionalities much easier to use in Forms, although there's less music and less fanfare. I also set up a YouTube channel, Josh Educates, to put just short videos up on different topics, so learners can go on there and sort of do it at their own pace.
There's no revision materials on there for you, isn't there?
Yeah. As long as I was aware of a lot of these tools, I never necessarily needed to use them before. So it was a great chance to kind of get into that a little bit, and it worked really well, I think.
Kelly, how about you? I know you got a new piece of hardware.
I did. Well, all of the above, obviously. Google Classroom, I definitely, I'd used a lot more with the adult returners in previous years, because I didn't find that the younger ones engage with it as much in maths, because they don't engage with maths as much, probably. But this year, I used Google Classroom a lot for that, because I could set them like a quiz question. I usually bribe them with an Easter egg or a chocolate orange or something like that. And they would actually engage over the weekend and things like that. So that was quite good. Definitely Meet was absolutely brilliant. I used Jamboard. That's actually quite cool. I like that thing. Thanks to Josh. And then we've got the visualizer, which kind of nearly there with that one, but that's the piece of hardware that I'm quite excited about getting a bit more use out of, because I do like the pen and paper methods, and I think it's a lot easier if we've got that visualizer, that little camera, to see what I'm doing, because in maths, I think students like to see you actually formulating the response. I don't like PowerPoint so much in maths. I don't want it just, well, here it is, bang, bang, bang. I want them to see the physical process. So the visualizer is quite exciting for that for me.
Yeah, they can probably all work with that, can't they?
Yeah, and I've recorded a video of me as well. I wouldn't recommend it. It's very boring. It's 20 minutes long. But again, that's the first time I've ever done anything like that. And I've had a couple of students have a look at it for me, and they said it was surprisingly interesting, I think was the phrase one of them said. So he said he was engrossed because I told him not to watch it all. So
very high praise. Very high praise.
Yeah, it's a huge high praise from that student.
Good, thank you. Okay, question 3. Obviously, being away from the classroom and being away from college, being away from a lot of the friends, being away from that safe zone for some students is very important. So how did you support your students emotionally during your sessions? Obviously, these are some of the students that you'd be seeing for 4, 5, 6 hours a week in some cases. So how are you dealing with these students? We'll have Josh lead that, please.
So I think very simply, the answer is being ready to welcome them into the chat was quite important. And also being able to give them a little private message via Google Chat to get them set up, to invite them in, to just say hello. Having separate chat windows open, which you can do in Google Chat, to just have like, this is a little chat space, this is a learning space. So you could engage with them a little bit, and you could ask them how they were doing. I think students really appreciated that in the beginning, especially as it was all very new to them. In their work as well, keeping that kind of good quality of comment and good quality of feedback to them was really important. So using Google Docs' live comment system allows you to just highlight a piece of their work, write in what you think of it, then they can digest that in their own time. And just seeing your icon appear in the top of their work, that you're looking at their work and seeing your cursor, actually motivates them to do a lot more. But also reminds them that, they are in a classroom, they are being monitored. It isn't just a digital workshop and that I'll see them at some point. Being live there just really made all the difference to my students, I think.
You mentioned about welcoming them into the room. I think that's one of the most important things that you do in a classroom anyway, isn't it? It impacts on their emotional well-being so much, and then that impacts upon their behaviour going forward as well. Kelly, can you add something to that, please?
Yeah, definitely agree with everything Josh said there. I found it was quite handy to have my phone next to me as well, so I could run all the different chats. So you've got the chat during Meet, you've got email, and you've got Google Classroom comments as well. All of these are private comments. And, you know, we're talking about these comments coming in during class time, but also 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, not the fact when I received them, but I did respond to them. And I think everybody knew in college that it was my biggest fear when we were going into lockdown as to the emotional effect that it was going to have on the students, because Darlington College is their safe place for some of them, and for some of them our classroom is, and you know, and we're the people that they trust and they feel like they can get the most out of. So just keeping up that general chat, talking about Tiger King, and all sorts of bits and pieces like that. So keeping it like I do in the classroom, and making sure that they realise that, you know, these meets weren't just about teaching them the maths and keeping them up to date with their revision, but making sure that they're okay as well. So having loads of different lines of communication open was definitely important for them.
Yeah.
We got a lot of feedback about that.
Lauren?
Yeah, communication was really the key to supporting them for me. I think it was every time the guidelines changed and something came out on the news, communication was key to kind of direct that back to them, because quite a lot of them weren't keeping up as much as we were in kind of where it was all going. I know it changed quite a lot, it still is changing now. And I think it was kind of getting that message across to them, but we're doing this, and kind of supporting them that way.
Yeah. And did you find that those changing demands meant there was a lot of conflict from students in some ways, conflicting information, conflicting views?
Oh, 100%. And I think sometimes I thought I was making the decisions. It was quite nice to show them that it wasn't, thank God. But yeah, I think it was nice to have that platform to be able to kind of express to them in a much more clear understanding, because I know the news can be quite confusing sometimes. This is what's happening, this is what we're doing, this is the next step, remember this, keep going, type of thing. It was nice to get that message across.
I have to say that, I mean, I ended up talking to a few parents along the way as well, who would pop into the meet. They knew their son or daughter was in the meet with me, and they would ask the questions directly, which I think they quite liked that as well. They liked that that level of communication with us. So it was always a bit of a surprise when they popped up, but it was, you know, it was nice that they felt that they could do that.
Yeah, I think it's important that you do mention those parents, because I think parents in this have been a forgotten part of that jigsaw, and it's important that they get the information from us and directly, and not through their students that have possibly interpreted it differently. So that was very good that you kept the parents on board too. Thank you. Question 4: what support did you receive from the college and the awarding bodies? And I would imagine that's quite wide-ranging, and it's two questions in one, really, I would imagine. Kelly, would you like to lead on that?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, as soon as we had a really good inkling that we were going to go into lockdown, although I think we all thought maybe it's a couple of weeks before Easter, maybe it's a couple afterwards, and then we'd be back in. That's what I thought anyway. A bit of an optimist. As soon as that came into play, we very quickly realised how the kids were going to be feeling, and therefore what we needed to do to make sure that we didn't interrupt their learning too much. So straight away the training on Google Meet, etc., kicked in, and that particular training for me was terrifying to the core, but it was good, and I did feel quite keen to crack on and do it after that. So I thought the college was really good. Obviously, my line manager made sure that we had anything that we needed. We had the offer of extra technology. If anybody wanted any extra, I don't know, webcams and things like that, you know, Lois was more than happy to order them for us. So I think it was just a case of we didn't really know what we needed until we started. It was a bit of a suck it and see, really. And then as we went along, we're like, oh, we could do with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Obviously, when the government guidance said that nothing that was done over the lockdown would count towards a predicted grade, that was a bit tricky to kind of bypass that and keep the students engaged. But some stayed with us.
I think it's very important what you said there about you don't know what you don't know, and I'm finding that with some of the schools that I'm working with as part of the EdTech Demo project. They don't know what questions to ask because it's all new for a lot of people. So the technology is new, the situation's new, and as we know, this is a once in a lifetime situation. Hopefully, Lauren, how did you find support within the college and from the awarding bodies?
Yeah, support within the college. We were very much supported just in those initial stages of we think it's going to, be a few weeks. This is what you need. And we did the CPD with yourself, Wayne, going over kind of like Google Meet and Google Tools. What I mainly took away from that is we did our CPD within our team, and it was nice to see where everyone was at. Like I wasn't the only one in the boat that was thinking, oh God, I don't know that one. But it was nice to kind of have that community aspect, and we kept that going throughout all of lockdown. So we had our own team Google chat, and if anyone was stuck, we would just literally make a comment on that. So the college support within our team was excellent. Like I think we're still now like helping each other out in terms of technology, especially with Josh there behind me back. He's right next door. But yeah, so I think kind of like the community aspect in our team was great, and we use Google chat throughout it to be able to keep that communication going with ourselves. It kind of kept ourselves sane and going through it. And I had a lot of support from the awarding bodies. I found that Pearson were quite strong. They sent me an email every week that gave you kind of like an overview of what's happened in the following week and what they're doing. And they also provided some online specific resources as well, which I found useful. I'd never really opened up online specific resources before until then. So it was nice that they directed you to those straight away. And that was within the first week of lockdown as well. And just to add in, I found test articles really, really useful as well. They were up to date on everything, and it kind of made you feel that everyone's going through it as well. It's not just our college and our staff. It's not just the English and maths team. It's kind of everyone's facing the difficulty that I am when I'm trying to teach online. And it felt, again, a bit more like a community.
Josh, can I ask you about safeguarding? How were you supported around making sure that students were safeguarded and you were safeguarded, and going forward, how does that affect practice?
So one of the biggest advantages we have with the Google Chat, Google Meet system is that everything is logged, everything is recorded, and various safeguarding members of the college have access to these chats and have access to these meets and these documents as well. So from a safeguarding aspect, for the young people, for our students, they're very well protected. You can't get anything past that system. On the other side of things for us as well, because of course you're dealing one-to-one with the student, messaging and things like that. With Google Chat and Meet, you can mute and take people's webcams off as well, so there's no chance of seeing or overhearing anything that you shouldn't, and vice versa as well. I felt like the college was really supportive with helping us get these projects off the ground. Without kind of stifling the innovation that could come out of it as well. And I just got to echo what Kelly and Lauren said. We built a real strong community between learners and between staff as well, and we were very helpful. And luckily for me as well, the college gave me the CPD option of doing my Google for Education training level 1. I'm working on my level 2 now, and that gave me access to a lot more knowledge and skills for all the G Suite programs, including like Jamboard. I never knew that was even a thing. And then suddenly it becomes one of the best tools for planning meetings and doing maths, as I'm sure Kelly will tell you. Well, I hope so anyway.
Thank you. Right, the next few questions are starting to move into how things are going to be different now going forward. So the previous questions have been a bit reflective and how things have changed and how you were supportive and what the drive was. And I think the next few questions are, how have things changed now, and what sort of things are you going to carry forward? So Kelly, how has your practice changed? What's changed in delivery of maths from your point of view?
Everything. You know what I was doing beforehand. I mean, it has completely changed how I look at delivery. I mean, I've already started teaching this year, so I've been doing some inductions with the adults. And one of the first things I say to them is, for goodness sake, make sure you can use Google Meet, because I have no idea when I'm going to need it. I mean, I'm a little bit upset about the prospect of snow days not being snow days anymore. But I said to them, you know, should there be a snow day or a national lockdown or a regional lockdown, you know, I'm going to go straight on to Meet, because it is as effective. So straight away in induction, I'm reminding them to make sure they've got onto Google Classroom. They can access chat, they can access Meet. I encourage them to kind of pair up and see if they could have a meet between them, etc., etc. Just thinking about how, obviously, with social distancing, how I'm going to give feedback on work without physically being able to approach a desk and touch the work and give it back to them, etc., etc. So obviously online submission, Doc Hub, that sort of thing is all terrifyingly exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. So what have you brought? Have you brought any remote or distance learning, distance teaching techniques into the classroom? Has that changed anything at all?
Well, I'm wanting to use a visualizer a little bit more, especially when I'm going to start doing the GCSEs, and of course the videos. So instead of going around, I'm thinking I've focused on problem solving techniques. So instead of going around and showing everybody the problem solving techniques, which tend to be numerous different techniques depending on how the student prefers to learn, using that video approach. So recording myself, showing several problem solving questions, and then they can access that, which frees me up to help other people.
Thank you. Josh, how is it in English?
So over in English, we're currently outside of G Suite trialing a system called Century, which I'm sure Lauren will tell you more about when it's her turn. But in short, it's a nifty little way for students to log on and self-guide their own learning with modules. We also use Kahoot. I'm going to use Kahoot more for more kind of quick quizzes, but also using Kahoot's tracking function to build spreadsheets of results and points, make it a bit competitive. Inside G Suite, we're going to use, I'm going to use more of the live comment system available in Google Docs. But what I didn't know is you can actually use that same comment system for pictures of students' work. So a student can still use handwritten paper, take a picture of that, upload it to the classroom. I can then see it on my screen and I can draw boxes around what they need to change and little comments which they can read in their own time, make those changes. Because what I found before lockdown, when I was going around to each student, maybe writing a handful of notes, moving to the next one as fast as I could, because you have so many students in a class looking for that feedback. However, when you're doing it all on Google Docs or a picture comment, it becomes this really detailed, but also kind of personal feedback session for the student, because no other student's listening to their feedback, and it means they're confident to ask questions, which I think is just really brilliant.
It's their space, isn't it? It's they're protected. And you also mentioned Kahoot there, and the feedback that you get from Kahoot, and those graphs that you get from there, those tables that you get are excellent for assessment for learning, aren't they? And planning your learning going forward. Yes,
they're brilliant, and they can be as professional or as casual as you like. Depends on what your students respond the best to. And the only other thing I've done, as I said before, started my own YouTube channel, which was an experience. Josh Educates, all one word. Give it a follow. I'm trying to make as many resources public domain as I can. So when lockdown happens again, or if it happens again, I should say, other tutors and teachers don't have to go too far to find good videos on English language and literature. So hopefully that gets used.
Good, thank you. Lauren, how has your practice in the classroom changed, looking back from how it was this time last year, for instance?
Very different. I think I love kind of team tasks, and I feel like that's what I thought I was going to miss out on. But in terms of like collaboration, I can definitely see them being able to collaborate on docs now, and I feel like they'll be able to use more technology to team kind of get together and share ideas. We're going to be using Century, as Josh mentioned. We're going to be using that Century platform for learners who are going to do an element of the course online. They'll probably do part of the course with us in person, part online. Century is going to help us because it's nice. It gives them a pathway. So just as they log on, they do a little assessment. It sees where they're at. It picks out all of their kind of areas for improvement, and then it takes them on a little path. And the complete, it's called a nugget. So they complete a nugget each kind of lesson. So we'll definitely be using that. Going forward as well, I'll be using Josh's YouTube, to be honest. I love a workshop. I love looking around the room and thinking that not everyone's doing the same thing. I like to see that this person's focusing on this area, this person's on that area. And it'll be nice to use Josh's YouTube videos just for that reason. If I can't get around to everyone and show everybody a different method, it's nice to have that there. And I do like it just because there's not that many materials for Edexcel that we use. It's mainly AQA. So because this is kind of something that we put together and it's directed at Edexcel, it feels a lot more usable in the classroom now. So we've been able to kind of twist something to suit kind of us for once. It's always AQA. So we're quite happy that we've got our own Edexcel pot brewing with Josh over there.
Thank you.
And in terms of sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and just the team as well. Like I feel team meetings now going forward, it's going to be a lot of Google Chat, Google Meet. And before, if one person of the team couldn't make it to a meeting, we might pause it, we might delay it. Whereas now a lot of our meetings will be on Google Chat, Google Meet. So especially for communication within the team, which is key, that's going to be a great help going forward.
Thank you. I was going to say, I know you use Chromebooks a lot already in the classroom, don't you? Is that something that you're going to develop further, or are you happy with your level of technology within your classrooms?
I love my Chromebooks. They're just behind me. No, the Chromebooks are great help, to be honest. And we've been kind of given the opportunity to give those who don't have access to technology at home Chromebooks as well. So it's great that the students will be able to use that as well for their online study. But definitely going forward, love my Chromebooks.
Thank you very much. Okay, last two questions. Question 6, what would a learner studying at Darlington College experience now? So thinking about what students came into last year, when they came to us September last year, very, very different to what we are expecting them to come to now. So when you think about safeguarding, when you think about social distancing and what's going on in the classroom, how's that experience different? We'll go to Josh.
So as many of you probably know, especially if you're in education and FE, you've got to keep those distance markers up between you and the student, which of course prohibits close contact and of course, close feedback as well, unless you're willing to wait, 2 days for that disinfecting period to occur. Of course, it's not ideal, but what we've found, or what I've found so far, and what I've been hearing, is it's still quite a positive experience for them to be back. In English, we are planning on having taught in class face-to-face sessions, but we're coupling that with just as much guided or direct digital skills work. So on that, what I mean by that is they'll join a chat or a meet, like I said before. They'll have work to do either on Century or an assignment on Classroom, which their online tutor knows about, and they'll try to accomplish that online with as much support as possible. I think their expectations are unknown even to them as well, because of course this is a once-in-a-lifetime situation. So we have to make sure that when they come into our classroom and when any learner kind of asks for your help, that you're very clear with what you're giving them and thankfully, I think we've got that pretty well sussed with all our digital resources. So in short, they're going to have digital learning skills as well as face-to-face contact. We'll try and keep it as normal as we can, but we're supplementing everything they're doing what we learned in lockdown about digital learning.
Thank you. Lauren, would you like to add to that?
I think their experience will change now because, to be honest, they've got a lot more independent learning they can be doing. Everything that we have on Google Classroom is accessible to them whenever they want. I think it's going to be more on them now, especially with an exam pending, which will be their resit in November. It doesn't give them that long. But now we do have the opportunity to kind of pass that over to them, give them as many resources as we can online and direct them through that, and then kind of let them be more independent with their learning. I think that technology allows that.
So you can see the very much a lazy teacher approach, shall we say, where the teacher will take a step back and put more on the learner.
I like to sit back and watch them learn.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Kelly?
I think definitely the blended learning will be an interesting thing to see how they adapt to that. Obviously, previously, they've had 3 hours with us face-to-face, the same tutor for the full 3 hours. With the blended learning approach that we're adopting at Darlington College this year, it'll be half and half, and your online tutor probably won't be the same tutor. So I think that could have a lot of positives for some students, because you've got differing approaches, and they've got that they've got basically twice the experience at their fingertips. So having the artificial intelligence through the Century and how it directs them to the nuggets that they need to do, obviously from the diagnostic assessment, so it diagnoses the bits that they're missing in their knowledge, will make them realise that it's very differentiated for them, and therefore, hopefully, with the buy-in, they will know that they're just doing the work that they need to do instead of one size fits all, which, in fairness, we haven't really done at Darlington College for several years, but there's always this feeling of, well, I can do this. So once they've done this diagnostic assessment through Century, we've got the evidence. We'll say, well, obviously, you couldn't, and we've got that evidence, and that's why we're asking you to do this. So it's having that direct link between I can do and what I need to do, and then they've got a choice. Really, they can choose to do a lot online. They can choose to submit work. They can choose to submit paper. I mean, a lot of maths is pen and paper methods, and they can still choose to do that, albeit we would encourage them to take photos and submit it that way. And we can, if they still want to write on pen and paper rather than doing everything digitally. So it's basically all about them. Our group profile will show how we are adapting to their personal preferences and how the blended learning approach, how we can make it work for each individual, which is scary but exciting at the same time.
Can you just recap what the blended learning approach is, so that they have so many hours contact time?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a 50-50 approach from the majority of students. Some of them are doing it slightly different, but 90 minutes face-to-face learning with us in the classroom, and then 90 minutes online learning using the online platform Century or other tools as they prefer. Okay.
And where will that blended learning take place? Is that expected for them to do that at home?
Now that's a good question, because that really does depend on their timetables. I think originally, as much as possible, it was planned that online sessions would take place on a day where they don't do anything else in college. Therefore, they can do it at home. As you know, we are trying to minimise the amount of students and staff in the building at any one time. But I am aware that some students have got it kind of in the middle of a day, so they may be doing it in their base room, or they may be doing it in the LRC, etc., which I think it'll be a little bit trickier for them. But of course, they don't necessarily have to be on a kind of a meet, as long as at their end of a chat whilst doing Century. So, you know, they don't really, I think they can access the online learning wherever they need to.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. Right, if anybody's got any questions, if you want to drop them into the chat, and we'll come back to those. We've got one more question to go. We've got question 7 coming up, and that's our last question around our experts, as they were, our panel. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to put to them, more specific, if you think that we've missed anything, if you think that you would like to delve a little bit deeper into certain aspects, then can you drop those into the chat, and I'll direct those to the panel, please. So question 7, and Lauren, can you lead on this, please? What 3 pieces of advice would you give to anybody else?
For me, it's always, and even just my student teachers, I say this to, have a backup plan. So with technology, have a backup plan. So say my students weren't feeling confident on Meet, have a backup plan of chat. I always feel confident with a backup plan. So that's my first one. My second one would be, every platform might not work for every student. So we haven't really trialed Century on our students yet. We haven't really gone through the process of Century. So it's just knowing that it might not work for everyone. And finally, just like have fun with it, really. So it's meant to be, technology for me is meant to be fun. In our team, we've just created an Instagram account for English to kind of keep their knowledge going at home. So when they're flicking through their Instagram, they'll see a post about language features and it'll just be really quick, a little image or something. But something like that can be fun. So it's kind of not taking everything too seriously and to kind of have a bit of fun with it as well.
Thank you. Yeah, one of my favorite comments is don't take things seriously, but take it professionally.
Exactly. I like that.
Josh?
So a few bits of advice. My first bit of advice is take that G Suite training. And if your college won't give you the CPD funds for that, you can still do a lot of that training for free, I believe, if that's still the case. At least I hope it's still the case. And that'll just take you through how a lot of the G Suite programs are used, and you'll learn something from that. My second piece of advice is have a bank of digital resources that you are sharing with your team. Okay. You need to be aware that lockdown season 2 is around the corner. And whether we go into lockdown or not is unknown, but I guarantee students are going to be asking for things to do at home. My third piece of advice is a bit more generic. It is accept that things have changed for the education industry. It's the same thing that happened to the media industry. It went from a very producer-focused industry in which, the user could only consume at the time that the producer made it. And now we're in education. It's turning the same way as it is now, in that the user can go on Netflix and download whatever they want and watch what they want when they want it. Education is turning into that. Education is going to be all about students logging on, taking the resources they want, learning at their own pace, and building that up with the teachers at face-to-face, because I still believe you're never going to escape the face-to-face and the good teaching practice that brings. But accept there's change, work with that change, be a content producer, and hopefully there'll be content consumers for you.
Thank you. I think you're very right about that shift from consumer to producer, and also some people listening to this may well be not familiar with G Suite. You might be on Microsoft Teams, or you might be on any other. Now, Microsoft Teams does still have its Microsoft education sites. Loads and loads and loads of material there. It's all tutor-led, or you can download the PowerPoints, and it's very easy through that to become a Microsoft certified educator or a Microsoft certified innovative educator. So that's well worth a look to. We have focused quite a lot on G Suite during this session, purely because we are a Google reference college, and we're very heavily into Google, and we have been for the past 7 years coming up, I think now. So it's embedded throughout our organization, and it does affect the culture of the organization. So last, Kelly, what are your 3 nuggets of advice?
Well, the first one is, before you go on any kind of like one-to-one or class meet, is make sure that you know what's in your bookcase behind you, because that's the first thing that people picked up. Not how wonderful my teaching was, but that I had a book called Does It Fart? So I think looking at your background is a really important thing, because I didn't think about that, and obviously haven't done for this afternoon session. So just lightly speaking about that. Secondly, for me, and this is very personal for me, is kind of chilling out, having a little bit of confidence, and always asking for help. And I'm very good at asking for help because I'm very aware that my skills in this area are a tad lacking. And I have no problem with asking people and saying, well, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? How can I improve this? Please help me. Because in my experience, everybody is just so helpful and so willing to help, you know, and they know what I'm like. But I think even the most confident of tutors with technology, this is all quite new to us. But you know, what you might be really good at, somebody might not, and it's lovely to share that knowledge and help. So that's a big thing for me. Ask for help. You know, get some improvement if you can. And then the last thing for me is ask the students what they like. Try to give them the level of communication, the streams of communication that they can use, and try and make the best out of it. And funny story, one of my students, she really didn't have any technology at home. She had a phone, very, very little data attached to it. What she had to do, creating an equation from a straight line graph as part of her unit criteria, and she had to do it. There was no predicting the grades for this particular one, so I had to teach that over email. So it's a case of adapting, being very reactive, because as Lauren says, you know, having your backup plan. I'm like, well, this is not a problem. I can do my presentation, this, that, and the other, but she couldn't access any of that. So I was taking photos, sending them via emails and things like that. So asking them what they're capable or what they feel comfortable with, and trying your best, even though that was probably the hardest bit of my teaching over lockdown, to give them what they need.
Thank you very much. And I think that trying your best is so important. One of the best pieces of advice I heard was a podcast I was listening to a while back, and they said that during all of this pandemic, the thing that educators and students need is grace. They don't need to be hit with a stick. They don't need to be directed. They need grace and understanding. And I think as long as you're doing your best, then nobody can ask for any more than that. So thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our planned questions. So nobody's dropped anything into the chat function. So if you want to unmute a mic and ask a question that way, feel free. Otherwise, we do have 3 more sessions coming up. Next week, we've got our principal, vice principal, and assistant principal, and they're going to talk about how the college has moved and changed over the last 6-7 months or so, and how COVID has affected the college. We've then got another session on going paperless with G Suite and Teams, so how we can reduce our printing costs to near zero. And then finally, on the last of that month, is G Suite and Teams Smackdown. So we're going to have a look at the comparison of Google Classroom and the G Suite, and then also Microsoft Teams. And we'll be, for all we are a Google reference college, I am a Microsoft certified educator, so I will be totally impartial. And again, we will have a fairly independent team who will look after, who will argue the points of each. And I think the results might surprise you. So if you can turn up for that, that would be great. If you need to get in touch, as I mentioned at the start of this session, this is all funded through the EdTech Demonstrator project. If you need to get in touch with me, my email address is whall@darlington.ac.uk, and you can get me at Wayne G. Hall on Twitter. And that's it. So thank you very much. It's been great having you all here. If you have any questions, drop me an email, get me on Twitter, or if you want some guidance and advice and you'd like us to link with us, then follow that link onto the EdTech Demonstrator site and request some assistance from Darlington College, and we'll be more than happy to engage with you. We can offer direct support for helping with your VLE, helping with specific issues around pedagogy and how we're moving to an online world, really. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.